So this sounds okay, I guess.
Yeah, it's
Skype is okay. All
yeah.
right.
You sound great. You got it working. Excellent. Everything's good.
It wasn't that hard. Just remember the log on.
Every writer knows that the best conversations about writing don't happen in classrooms or symposia or any fancy artisanal setting. They happen at the bar, usually after deadline. That's the vibe we're going for here. This is The Other 51, Conversations About Writing. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Moritz. This week's guest is Steve Politi, columnist for NJ.com and the Star Ledger. Steve, first of all, thanks for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and first of all, congratulations on the recent ApS Award for Best Columnist in, I think they call it Group A, which is like a World Cup-y sounding thing. But anyway,
Exactly.
Congratulations
it's
on
the group of death, though. Let's be clear.
So congratulations on that. That's a really
Thank
cool honor. I'm wondering, what does that mean to you to get that acknowledgement, especially from editors and your peers in the business?
It meant quite a bit. I've been doing this for 20 years, so then the 15 years as a columnist, and I've never won before. So that was very cool. But mostly just to be in that group of names that's on the list: Sally Jenkins, Bill Plaschke, Ivan Meisel, friends like Tara Sullivan and Mike Selsky. It was just cool to be in that group, and they treated me really nice at my place. They had a little champagne toast for me and Matt Stammeyer, a colleague who also placed number one in beat writing. So it's been a good couple weeks.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when I was a young reporter coming up, and like these awards, they were like everything. Like you really wanted to win it, and like I won. I was the top 10 national APSE one time, and it's still like you still remember hearing about that, and it's very cool to hear that it doesn't lose that excitement, even if you've been in the business a while.
No, it's still, it's still nice. And I think that, like I said, the fact that I'd never won before, and for my name to pop up, and it really just a lot of nice notes from people in the business and colleagues who I work with closely at big events, reaching out to say congrats. It was cool.
Yeah, so I do want to get to the four columns that you won for and kind of go through them all kind of individually, because they're a great group and they're such an interesting combination of columns. But first, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about your career path. You said you've been doing this for 20 years as a columnist for 15 years. So how did you get to this point in your career?
Right, and I started actually when I was in high school. I worked for our town paper in Nutley, New Jersey, making $4 an hour covering high school sports. Just went to journalism school at University of North Carolina and worked for the Daily Tar Heel there. And just, it's always been something I've done. I was very lucky early on to identify something I enjoyed. And, I delivered the Star Ledger when I was a boy growing up. So when the opportunity came in 1998 to move back up here to do like a hybrid sports features enterprise job, I jumped at it and, was fortunate enough that they promoted me to columnist a few years later, and that's kind of what I've been doing. And a lot of things have changed in the industry, but I've just I've just kind of been standing here weathering the storm because I love my job, and I like where I live and the people knowing the fact I'm writing for people that live in my neighborhood. So it's been a good run.
Yeah, what newspaper was it that you worked for in high school?
It was called the Nutley Sun.
Okay.
Yes. A proud weekly newspaper covering, I covered my classmates for the football team, baseball team of, different sports. So I was 15 years old and, already writing sports stuff. And I've got a scrapbook full of old clips from back then that I look back on sometimes and chuckle about.
So where were you before? You said you came up to the Star Ledger in 98. Where were you before then?
I did. I spent 4 years at the Raleigh News and Observer after college. I covered Duke for 2 years, and then I was the inaugural beat writer for the Carolina Hurricanes when they moved from Hartford, Connecticut to North Carolina. So I covered them during their first season in Greensboro, North Carolina, since I was the one person on our staff at the time who had actually seen a hockey game, which made me by far the most qualified person to do it. And that was a fun experience.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, what's that like? Having a new beat, and all of a sudden, it's a little less so now, but like the foreign concept of hockey in North Carolina back then was like, what? It's like hockey on Mars or something like that.
it was pretty much like that. Yeah, and they had to play 90. They were going to obviously settle in Raleigh, but they had to play in Greensboro, which if anybody who lives down there knows it's a solid hour, 15-hour, 20-minute drive. So yeah, I mean the crowds there were 5,000 people in the building, and my favorite part was just obviously you'd have these. You have these guys from Canada come down here and just like look at the spectacle. And I became like the tour guide for these people who had like no idea where on earth they were going. Like Wayne Gretzky, a little off the beat, but Wayne Gretzky came down his first time in North Carolina to play a game down there. And I just remember the reaction to like the people, he was happy because he could walk out in the hotel lobby and no one knew who he was. But like, the media was like, "Oh my God, Wayne Gretzky's in North Carolina. This is crazy."
That's awesome.
But it was fun. I mean, it was just I got to travel in Canada and follow the team and for a year, and it was a lot of crazy memories doing that. So it was a good experience.
Yeah. So looking at the group of columns, kind of getting back to the APSE award, and the and the columns you wrote for it, the four that you picked. Now, did you pick these, or did an editor pick those? How were these selected to be entered?
I did. I picked them myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about these four stood out to you in general?
I mean, I've had different philosophies on what stuff to enter, and I usually try to get a wide range of stuff. And this year I put in 2 columns at the Masters because I did like them a lot, and they got a good response. And I think I found that these days that social media is a pretty good barometer for whether or not things have been read well. So all 4 of these columns, seem to do pretty well on social media, and people, responded well to them. So that made it my choice. I did one on Eric LeGrand, who, he is obviously the inspirational paralyzed Rutgers football player. That I spent 24 hours with him straight, and I thought that was a unique idea that kind of put me in his just behind the scenes when he's not the smiling face of the paralysis community, what he has to go through every day. I did one on Bob Hurley Sr., who as a great basketball coach from St. Anthony High School, and just how he's handling retirement. And I took him I dragged him kicking and screaming to a high school basketball game. I bribed him with pizza to get him there, and wrote about just what he's doing, his life after coaching all these years. And then my 2 at the Masters, one, it's been like my personal white whale. I finally found the guy who dry cleans the green jackets, which is just, I don't know why I get obsessed with things. And that was something I was obsessed with. And, managed to find him through a series of cold calls to dry cleaners in Augusta, Georgia. It's like, what did you do today, honey? But, I just thought that was a unique idea. And then finally, the 4th one was, I played the course for the first time, and that, obviously set itself up based on my own golf game for plenty of comedy. So I figured I put one funny one in there. Maybe the judges would take pity on me.
Well, it's funny because Mike Vaccaro, mutual friend of ours, he's spoken to my classes. Yes. He's been on the podcast before, and he said how it's important, he thinks, for a columnist to kind of have it's like the equivalent of having different pitches. You have your fastball, your curveball, and you have your funny column, your straight column, your kind of poignant column, and this kind of really kind of shows a variety of that. It kind of shows and I think probably these days, especially, the importance for a columnist to have that kind of flexible approach and be able to write multiple columns.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and Vac is a good example of just having that tremendous range. I mean, he can weave a tale from something that happened in, the 30s one day, and the next day he's firing a fastball up Jeff Wilpon's ass for whatever happened with the Mets. So he's the best at that. And, I totally agree with that. That's kind of what you have to do. I mean, the days of just kind of sitting back and, telling what happened in the game are long over. You've got to be able to find stories that will attract attention virally, and you've got to be able to, take a strong opinion that will do the same. Will get people talking, and you've got to kind of zig where others are zagging. You kind of be the guy who's in a different corner of the clubhouse when everyone's talking to the star player. So, there's a lot of ways to do it, but, I agree with Vac that you need to have a lot of different pitches.
So let's kind of take these columns a little bit one at a time, if you don't mind. Let's start with the Eric LeGrand piece, and kind of how this, kind of walk me through how the idea for the story column came about, and then the reporting process on it.
This was actually, I got to give credit to an editor who suggested why don't you spend a week straight with Eric LeGrand? And I got him to agree to 3 days, and his mother called me, and luckily I've known the family for a long time. Eric's been great to me. I've written about him a million times. I know his mother. His mom called me and says, "What do you mean you're going to spend 3 days in my house?" Screaming at me. I'm like, "Oh, Karen, I'm sorry. I'll do well, but one day." So once I promised her we wouldn't take any pictures of her with her hair not done, she agreed very graciously to let us stay there. So, and then it just became, it just became being a fly in the wall and observing, and the stuff that didn't occur to me, it didn't occur to me to watch him closely in public, because he goes to this Mets game and he's just there hanging out, and you don't realize that his friends are feeding him, or wiping the bubbles of beer off his, not only pouring the beer down his throat, but wiping his face when he's got crumbs on his beard, and just taking care of bringing him to the porta potty to empty his urine container, just stuff that you don't realize until you're paying close attention. And then, being at home and obviously seeing the painstaking routine at night to get hoisted into bed. And, in the middle of the night, he has to call out for his aide to ask for help because the heat's too high, or that, he wants the blanket pulled off, or he's thirsty, just stuff you just completely take for granted that you just can't, that he can't do on his own. So, I thought, I was kind of blown away by the end of it, just how difficult it is, not for A, to be him, and then B, how easy he makes it look when he's out in public. Just people just constantly walk up to him and hold out their hand, waiting for him to shake it. I mean, it's just amazing. And every time I'm with him, someone does it, because he's so, you don't even realize that he can't move. Yeah. So it's just, I wanted to paint the whole picture of what was going on with him. So that was the origin of that one.
Yeah, so what's that reporting process like? You can't kind of become a fly on the wall. And obviously you have a relationship with him and know him, so it's probably makes it easier, I would guess. But what's that like to just kind of sit around and watch him? And are you taking notes the whole time in a notebook? Are you just watching and going back later? I'm interested, how does that actually play itself out? Yeah.
A lot of it is, I was taking a lot of notes in my phone, because you don't want to be standing there at a tailgate with a pad out the entire time.
Right.
And it's just things I would see. I could just put on the little notes file on the iPhone. But you're right. A lot of it is because he's comfortable. I've been around him a lot. He's comfortable around me. That makes it a little easier. But, there are just instances where he had to say, "Steve, leave, you got to leave now," just because it was just too personal. Right. I mean, some of the routine is just, it's just extremely invasive. I mean, it's just, there's no other way around it. It's just awful what he has to go through every day. So that was obviously, I would leave the room then. But for the most part, it was just kind of hanging out and injecting a joke every now and then when the opportunity called for it. But just trying to be, just being, listening and talk, listening and watching. The two big things there.
Did you find that one challenging to actually write out? Because you have 24 hours of notes. I mean, is it a challenge to actually kind of organize and put it together, or did it come together kind of naturally?
I did. It's funny, I did, and I had written a couple of drafts, and I guess he's got to credit a good editor. My editor, Kevin Whitmer, I sent him a draft I was happy with, and he said, "Look, I think you've written the column that anyone would expect you to write." And so it was interesting to hear that, because I was like, well, what the hell does that mean? So my first question, but his point was that, this is good, but you're there, you're the eyes and ears here. You're the guy in that room. What's it like to be in the room? I mean, don't write about what happened, write about how you feel. And it was just an interesting thing. And I went back and because I was there, lying sleepless on this couch in the swell, just thinking about what he's thinking. And so I kind of I wrote it in a completely different way after he said that. And I think it made it better, because it was really it was less about this what he's going through, and a lot about just, how it made me feel. And it was, I think that made it more personal, and maybe, a little harder to write, certainly. But I think that's why I connected with people, because, if you've spent any time around the guy, that has to pop in your head. It's like, he can't be this happy. He must have, this must be hard. Just stuff these thoughts that are just going through your mind a lot. And I was kind of confronted with them in a major way being around him. So I mean, I made that the focus of the story.
Yeah, I love that. I tell my students that a lot, whether they're writing a blog or doing a story, like bring your own, like maybe not always first person, obviously, but bring your own experience to this. Bring what you see, what you hear. I tell them that always. I feel like a lot of young reporters too, they kind of get very focused on the quote or what they're saying, and like, no, use everything else that you're seeing and feeling and hearing and all of that. That's, like you said, it makes it such a more personal but universal piece, and you can connect with it more.
It does, and it's hard to do. And I because you don't want to make it about yourself necessarily, but so it's just like there's a fine line between, you can't write like, hey, here I am, I'm with Eric LeGrand, you can't be like, you got to make it so it's still about him and it's still about what's going on, and he's the central character. But I could give you a list of the top 10 sports writers in the country, and all of them have that ability to just make you feel more than just what you're seeing or how you're feeling. And it's an interesting line. But you're absolutely right. More young writers should try to do that.
So the Bobby Hurley piece, was the pizza good? First of all,
yes. Well, that was the whole thing. I mean, and we have no shortage of pizza here in New Jersey, as I'm sure you're aware. But it was a place called the Star Tavern, which is universally regarded as the best pizza in New Jersey. So, and if it's in New Jersey, it's the best in the country. So, I had agreed to meet with him to cover a game, to go to a game, take him to a game, and he only agreed because the game was across the street from his apartment in Jersey City, and that game got moved to another night. We couldn't go. So I'm like, hey, Bob, how about this game, the Seton Hall prep game? And he immediately knew. He's like, what, you want me to go to West Orange? It's 20 minutes away. I was like, come on, Coach, I'm not dragging it. I'm not dragging it to like Southern Utah here. It's just, but that's just kind of him. He's just, he's kind of set in his ways, and he didn't want to go. So the agreement was that we would go after the game. We'd go out for pizza. So I had to bribe him to get him there.
And it was such a fun column to read, and not only for the pizza part, but just kind of the idea of this legend, probably the greatest high school coach of all time, this great, Jersey legend, and kind of just sitting in the stands watching the game, watching him watch the game. Just, it felt like reading it. It just felt like a lot of fun to get to do that.
It was, yeah. And it's just another example of knowing someone, being right about someone you know about for a long time in a different way. I've covered Bob for a long time, but it's always been that he is the central figure of any basketball game he's at. He's been that way for Hall of Famer. He's won 1,200 games at the tiny St. Anthony, but when the school closed and he's kind of confronted with this, still a young man at 70, still very energetic. How is he going to use his time? And he just decided he wasn't going to travel to another high school or try to, he had a lot of offers to different places, but he just closed that chapter. And now runs clinics in Jersey City for kids, and he's still close to the game and teaching, but he really did cut the cord in a pretty impressive way when it comes to going to games. So to be able to take him there, watch it with him, talk about it with him, it was cool. It was fun for me too, because it is a different, and you can just feel his perspective and some of the things he's going, like the clock's your opponent now. Just some of the things that you could just tell. These are things he says he would say all the time when he's coaching. So that made it fun.
So both the LeGrand piece and the Hurley piece, obviously, they're both very Jersey kind of specific stories, very Jersey specific columns. And you grew up there, so I'm wondering what makes a good Jersey story.
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's the characters. It's the central the central Jersey character. Like we have so many, and it's not just sports, but we'll end up having so many stories about the mob boss or about the just people you don't like, the Hudson County politician, people you don't see, people you don't find elsewhere. A lot of times make the best Jersey stories. I mean, The Sopranos is a fictional TV show, but it's not. I live within walking distance of like 5 different places where they shot scenes from that movie, and you could totally see it for the series. I'm sorry, you could totally see it happening in real life. So I think that's part of it. But the universal, a good story here is a good story in Montana. The universal parts of it, just what the protagonist is overcoming and the obstacles and how unique it is. I think that's what makes any good story good.
Right. So, as a lifetime upstate New Yorker, why does Jersey have so many characters? I mean,
that's that's great. That's like another guy. I don't know. It's just it's just the type of people, I guess. And it's not like, it's funny. It's, it is a very diverse state, and it's like, people think of Jersey, they have like one image in their head. I think that's part of it too. There's so many different corners of the state, and so many different towns and communities and different types of people. That I think it's just, but it's also a place where people are pretty big individuals. They're opinionated. They've got strong personalities. I think that contributes to it too. And we're not afraid to say things like I'm sure that those people exist in the South, but maybe if they're a little bit more polite down there and a little less inclined to broadcast how they feel about things, could be part of it as well.
Right. So your two master's columns, I loved reading them this week, getting ready for our talk, especially because I'm reading "You Gotta Play Hurt" by Dan Jenkins, and I just read the part where he was at the character was at the Masters, yes. So that was a wicked juxtaposition there. And so, like you mentioned earlier, that the guy who dry cleans the green jackets is kind of your white whale. Yes. Was your white whale? Why? Where'd that idea come from?
So this is one of these roundabout stories, but I've learned. I've gone to the Masters. This will be my 17th Masters next week, and I learned early on that no one's coming to me to read about my golf coverage.
Okay.
I mean, the best way I can explain it, like especially now in the internet age, like you can't, they're not looking for my thoughts on Adam Scott's putting. I mean, like so. I've increasingly and also that there's a deep fascination with that place and that course and that club and that town that doesn't exist anywhere else. Like it's like Augusta National is a character, like a character in every Masters. It's part of it, So I've done, every year I've just done gone a little bit further afield and trying to find. Like one year I did the trailer park that's where Rays Creek goes through a mobile home park.
Okay.
I wrote about that. I found this house that Augusta National is gobbling up all this property around the course, and I found this house this old couple will not sell, and I wrote about them. One year I wore a green jacket around the course. That was
fabulous. Yeah.
Just coming up anything that just something different that might just set me apart from what everybody else is doing. So, this was just another example. Like a woman sent me an email, and she started the email. It's like one of the greatest emails I've ever gotten. Like, I always admire how you write different stories from the Masters. I'm like, oh my gosh, this one, I love you, lady. Who are you? So someone actually noticed this. And then it continues like that. She had gone down there and she met this woman who said she dry cleaned the green jackets. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea. So I went down there one year and I tried to find her and I couldn't. And I went down the next year. This year I'm going to call ahead and find her. And I called her. I got her cell phone connected even and talked to her. But she blew me off. So another year had come and gone without writing the dry cleaner story. So I finally figured out that, all right, maybe this woman's not really doing it. Like maybe there's something wrong here. So then I just decided I was going to do my own independent investigation. And I asked the course. I asked Augusta. I figured this is like, who cares for dry cleans a green jacket? And the spokesman said, like, not only can I not give you this information, but I prefer that you do not quote me in your story. I'm like, what am I asking? I'm not asking for the combination to the wine vault here. So then I started wandering around. I figured maybe it's on the grounds. So I was wandering around, like back trying to maybe like any building that looked like it might have like a enough room for a dry cleaning machine. So then I started driving around and going to different dry cleaners, and I started cold calling dry cleaners. And I swear, like the fifth one I called this one and asked for the owner, and the owner, well, that's Miss Brickle. She doesn't come in here very often. So I found Miss Brickle's number and I called her at her house, and she said, "Well, yes, we've been doing the jackets for many years now." And I nearly dropped dead. I was like, "Oh my God, you're kidding me, lady! You're kidding me!" And then she told me it's her son who does it, and I just went out and met up with this guy at his shop, and he just explained to me in excruciating detail like how he does these jackets, and it just went on and on and on. Like he'd finally found someone who his life work. Just playing like some interested guy from New Jersey, strange dude from New Jersey wants to hear, wait, how it's 47 minutes and 53 seconds? Okay, exactly. Like, how long you put the press on? And it just, so, I don't know, it just became, so it felt like, I don't think I've ever waited longer to write a column than that one.
Right. I mean, some of the other great ones, you asked how Arnold Palmer ordered or not Arnold Palmer, which is fantastic. I mean, what did he order? Mr. Palmer?
He said, I'll have a Mr. Palmer, and then winked, which is, of course, exactly how he would do it.
Right.
Exactly how he would do it.
Right. And my favorite detail, and you're playing the Masters, all of these, I'm going to have all of these in the show notes for the episode, but when you played Augusta, I think my favorite part of that story is when you warmed up for it by playing putt-putt with Dan Wetzel the night before.
I was talking to Dan yesterday. I was like, you've contributed to this in a major way by kicking my ass in putt-putt. Yeah, we were just like, because I wasn't going to write that column if I couldn't come at it like no one wants to read about I walked on the Howell grounds and I shot a 73. Nobody wants to read that, and I knew that if I entered, I would suck. I knew that for starts, but it had to be more. I had to take it like a little bit further to like write about the build up to do it and how I had to get the gear, and it was completely unplanned. Like I entered just a complete lark. I'm like, yeah, let me put it in this year. I'll never get it because I really thought it wasn't the least bit random, and sure enough, my name came up, and then like, all right, so now just let me ask Nick Faldo for advice, and he blows past me and says, look, don't just walk around, like just all these little fun things, trying to get ready for it, and it blew me away. It was great. I mean, just playing the course and just exactly how I knew I was as bad as I expected to be. And bad golf, writing about bad golf is better than writing about good golf.
Oh, no question.
Doing the first person stories. So
having done these every year, I mean, you said like it doesn't seem like there are any shortage of ideas, but do you ever kind of like think going in, like you're going down there next week as we record this week as this comes out? So like, are you like, what are you thinking ahead of what you're going to do? Do you kind of let it?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. And I thought I had a good idea, but it looks like it's falling through. So I don't have a good idea this year. So I'm only a week away. I'm starting to get nervous, but a lot of times, like you'll just see something. I mean, you're there. Something will happen in front of you. It's just kind of looking for it. Like one year, there was a bit of like doing this column on how, using your cell phone on the course can get you banned for life. Not just like kicked out. You'll get a letter from them saying, do not come back. I mean, it's great how freaking great. So, I mean, did that one just happen organically as I was there? A lot of times it'll just be like that. But yeah, I prefer to have a couple ideas in the bank. So if you got anything, please. Well, if you're listening out there, shoot me an email, folks.
Or you can just visit all the Waffle Houses, which was another fantastic piece.
Well, that's another one that happened. I had nothing. I didn't have a great idea, and I was like, I went to the first Waffle House and it was packed, and I'm like, let me see if I can find another one. And of course, there's one across the street, so let me go there. And then it just dawned on me, I'm like, hey, I can go to the mall, and let's just do it. Why not?
So I'm wondering. I love the idea of you mentioned the kind of zigging while other people zag and finding like the crazy column, especially at an event like the Masters that's so widely covered. And I'm wondering, it seems like why do you feel like those columns and these ideas are kind of rare, or like that more writers don't try to do it?
I think part of it is that. I'm lucky that I'm in the position where I can do it. I'm not, they're not sending me there to cover golf. I mean, if you're there and you're there for one of your outlets, and you are, 80% of those people are in the building are golf writers. So they, they're there to cover that. They are. It is their responsibility to chronicle, and there is great interest in what happens in the tournament. So I don't blame like Jason Sobel or some of the great golf writers I know for not going out. And I think the other part of it is that. There is in the industry, there is like a reluctance to sometimes to break out of where we are inside that box. And I think part of that is that, you just get used to it. You get into a groove where you're at the Super Bowl and they give you the availability schedule, and, you're going to talk to a certain day, and you know what the big topics are. It's just like you get into this where it's hard to say, wait a minute, I can't, why would I write the 47th best Tom Brady column this week.
Right.
And no one's going to read, like, no one's going to read that. Like, what? Like, you have to force yourself to step back and go, all right, what's a better idea? Knowing that probably anything, right? Probably anything is going to be a better idea than me trying to explain Tom Brady's greatness to, a bunch of people in New Jersey who hate the guy's guts. So, it's just trying to force yourself to do it. And it's like, I won't do it every day when I'm there. I mean, I'll write Tiger Woods one day, like everybody else. I'll follow Phil Mickelson around the course on Friday. I'll still cover golf, but I do, like, 2 or 3 times when I'm down there, I do try to challenge myself to come up with something a little different.
How important to a column is that central idea? Like taking Bob Hurley to a basketball game, 24 hours with LeGrand, with Eric LeGrand, who dry cleans it. Not just, aside from the reporting and the writing, and obviously all those things are critical, but the central idea, like that idea, how important do you find that is?
Very. And I think it's become even more important and even easier to identify now that we, it's pretty clear in modern journalism. If you don't have a good headline, no one's going to read what you write now. So, like, I played Augusta National and had my own Masters meltdown was like a very easy. Well, right. I can relate to that. Like it's a very easy headline.
Right.
Like, I don't forget the headline. But, meet the man who dry cleans the green jackets at Augusta National. There's something like, okay, like, yeah, I think it is important to kind of have that central focus and be able to summarize your premise in a couple of sentences, because you don't have a lot of time in a column. Certainly, a long column might be 1,000 words. The LeGrand thing was probably 2,000 words because I had so much time and access. But even that's not a lot of time to get across, what you're writing about and what you're trying to show people. So if you have that central focus, I think it makes it much easier.
So how do you kind of hone that? Where does your kind of idea magnet, for a horrible phrase, oh my god, but where does that come from? Like how do you find these ideas? How do you come up with them?
It's just constantly for 2 ways. One way is like a familiarity with the play. Like I've been to the Masters now 16 times, so I have a good idea what people are interested in and what makes an interesting story. But the other side of it is that you have to constantly, detach yourself from it and look at it through a different set of eyes. Like I covered the state wrestling championships in New Jersey, high school state championships, because girls were wrestling for a state title for the first time, and it was an easy column. Go down there, girl power, yeah, go write that.
Right.
But that was done early in the afternoon, so I was going to stick around and try to write something off the boys too. And it, just having never been there before, I was just completely unaware of like just the utter devastation that these kids who like wrestled their entire life and finished in second place. So they're the second best wrestler in the state out of thousands of wrestlers, but they walk off feeling like they're absolute utter failures. And they go to this one little loading dock in the Atlantic City Boardwalk Hall, and they just weep and sob and like curl into the corner. And it's like it's the most awful thing that I've ever seen. And it was just, I wrote about it because as I'm just standing there and watching it, it just occurred to me, like, this is just, I think anybody who participates in sports can relate to it. And I was talking to our high school staff about it. Like, they're all like, well, why didn't we think about doing that sooner? And I said, I think it's just because I had never been there. Like, I'd never seen it. Like, it's just that ability to, like, take a step back and something you're completely unfamiliar with. I'm like, all right, what's interesting? Well, that's pretty interesting,
Right.
And I think that's part of it too, is kind of challenging yourself to look at something with kind of that detachment of like, all right, well, what would someone who's never been here before see here,
And there's that kind of knowledge and ability to follow through on that too. Like I tell my students all the time, like if there's something in your reporting, even on a news story, that interests you, that you say, oh, cool, or oh my gosh, that's got to be in your story. I would even make that your lead, because if it interests you, if it blows you away, it's going to blow me away. There's a really good chance that I'm going to be impressed by it. Or even if I knew it, I'm going to be impressed, like, hey, this person thought that was cool. That's interesting. And it's so that honing that sense is so important. Right.
And I think that's the other part of it, is not just honing that sense, but being confident in yourself to take that chance. And when I like tell people who, like there's no penalty. Like I've written many things like this this kind of went into the ether, like, oh, that didn't work. Like I tried. I thought it was a great idea, but then I hit tweet and it just, we just fizzled away. And okay, well, that one didn't work. But no one's like getting on Twitter going, hey, you jackass, that was a dumb idea. Like you don't get like punished for it. Like,
right.
All right, just try something else, try something again, So I think that's like, getting out of that fear of failing on the story, I think is also important.
Yeah. I ask every guest on my podcast this, so I'll ask you, what's the best thing you've read lately?
That's actually nothing about sports. Does that count?
Yeah.
I read the New Yorker story. I'm sure it's making the rounds. It'll probably be in your feed if it's not already. About the asteroid that hit the Earth and killed all the dinosaurs.
I have that saved. I haven't read it yet. I'm making sure I have the time for it. It sounds so cool.
Yeah, and it's just sort of like a combination of, and I'm not really a science nerd, but like I'm just enough kind of like holy shit factor to what happened, and then like the fact that it's some graduate student who's the guy who discuss like really obscure scientist who comes up with the big discovery and puts it all together. That was really a cool one that I would recommend.
Awesome. Well, Steve, this has been great, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with at the Masters this year.
Yeah, thanks. And again, please send me an idea, folks. I'm tapped.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
As always, thanks for listening to The Other 51. You can find show notes for this episode and all our episodes at sportsmediaguy.com on the Other 51 tab. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. I can highly recommend Overcast for this. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.